the House of Representatives had a vote in the thick of the Gaza war, and we saw all the images coming out of there a bit more than a year ago. And I think there are about 500 representatives in the House of Representatives, Lance. And there was a motion proposed with full and solid and blind, unequivocal support for what Israel was doing. And that motion was carried with about 495 votes. I can't remember whether the other 5 abstained or actually voted against. But I think it's quite telling about the power of the Israel lobby and what we're up against. But I have never been myself one to be defeatist. No way. And as Daragh also mentioned, having seen apartheid South Africa disappear in my lifetime, which I didn't think I would, having seen a black man in the White House, I never thought I would see that, but I'm seeing it. We can have our opinions as to how he's doing. That's another story. But the fact that it's happened is a fantastic development. The fact that the Iron Curtain has disappeared, I didn't think I would see that. And so many things. There are a lot of issues in this world that demand our attention and our support. But I reason for myself that why the Palestinian issue is, for me, the greatest injustice is because they didn't ask for it. I feel so much for the Burmese. I feel so much for the North Koreans. I feel so much for the Zimbabweans and the Sudanese and in many other places around the world. But this is an issue where it has been forced on them. The Palestinians were living side by side, Jewish people, Armenians, Orthodox Christians, and all kinds of other groups that are still there today, minding their own business, living in harmony, getting on with their daily lives, tilling their land, bringing up their families. And suddenly, the old colonial powers, primarily the one that I am from myself originally, the UK, came and destroyed this whole thing. And we are living with that today. And as the former Prime Minister of that country, Tony Blair, realized, although he's not really taking any consequences from it, that we talk about terrorism, that the only way to do anything about going any way towards doing something about terrorism is solving this issue. And solve it we must. When I tell people that I myself am involved in working for Palestine, immediately I get either reactions of, well, they're just a load of terrorists, the Arab terrorists, and or that will never ever be resolved. And I think I'd like to hand back again to Daragh here. Is it resolvable, Daragh? And how, in practical terms, is it going to be resolved?
I think if I knew the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here, to be honest. Of course it's resolvable. For all those issues you said, I think politically the most important thing at the moment is probably internal reconciliation between Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Fatah in the West Bank. That's a major obstacle to any progress, and I think the only people it benefits at the moment are the Israelis. But beyond that, for us, the one thing we've always said at PCHR is it's one of the most complex problems in the world, but the answer is one of the most simple. And this might be, I think, maybe slightly naive, but we do believe in the rule of law and in justice. And there is a very specific way and a very specific path to peace and equality. And that's one of the things we go over, just the implementation of UN resolutions, the implementation of international law. And that would provide a perfect basis, perhaps on the basis of 2 states for the time being, but then after that, who knows when there is peace. But it requires a lot of goodwill, I think, from both sides, and that hasn't been forthcoming, particularly or almost exclusively from the Israelis in the last 15 years since Oslo.
But when I say we, those of us who are trying to do what we can for the those of us who are trying to do something for the Palestinians, we have no axes to grind ourselves, but we just feel for them and see the justice of their cause. How are we going to bring this about? How are we going to get it resolved when we lack resources? Before this meeting, you and I talked about the fact that we don't have the eloquent, slicker than slick people that the Israelis have, although we don't want that, of course. But we are the representatives of the Palestinians. The Palestinian representatives themselves don't have the resources and don't have the same means to put the case internationally. The propaganda war has been continuously lost by the Palestinians. It might be changing slightly now. How are we going to affect world opinion so that governments are going to actually have to do something more concrete?
I think the biggest thing is that we have to make it, for governments to make it a domestic issue, to mobilize support within.
Microphone and or come here if you would like. Who is that? Please identify yourself and okay.
David,
Okay.
from the UN. I am a visitor over here. This is my first time, in fact, to your illustrious David.
Yes.
To your illustrious organization. I realize that we've moved from the movie, which is why I came here to see the film. David, come on. I work for the UN, for FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. I'm over here in Bangkok, and I've been here for about 6 months. Yes, David.
Only David?
Yeah.
Most of us use full names, please.
Okay. Dr. David Khan. Okay? For the UN. Now, I realize that we've spoken about many, many different issues over here. There's the movie as well, This Palestinian Life. I found it very, very interesting. I had a sense that it was a Palestinian life, or a Palestinian life of a number of people who were interviewed. There were, I think, 5 main persons being interviewed within that film. And I have a sense that Palestinian life is more complex. Palestinian life varies between, as you quite rightly say, Gaza. It varies between these communities in the southern part of the West Bank. It varies also with the urban areas, the areas that are not under, is it Area C?
Sorry,
Area
Area
C?
A is not on.
Area A. So I'm saying that there are many, many different variations of Palestinian life. One thing that I sort of noticed in the film was that there wasn't any effort to have any commentary or any response from any Israeli. It was people interpreting the motives that lay behind certain events. And my sense is that some of the pictures that one sees, one gets the sense that it didn't just happen just like that, out of the blue. There may have been a cause and effect relationship leading up to it. An example might be that this whole film was around the concept of Samun. Samun, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. And the concept itself, maybe that didn't really exist in these places that were bulldozed, because the Israeli, otherwise one has to understand the Israeli army's motive. One may say that they may have been militants. Some militants may have been beyond the concept of Samun, but the implications and the effects were what we may have seen in the film. So my observation of the movie was that there was maybe much more to it, much more cause and effect type of actions that were taking place. It would have been good, it would have most probably have enhanced the film if we could understand it in greater detail.
Well, perhaps, Dr. Khan, we could invite you and others to a separate program where we can bring different perspectives together and discuss it together.
That's also fine. That's also fine.
Would
That's
you-
also fine. Yeah, fine.
Would you be willing to participate?
I'd be willing to participate, but I'm not sure because my own particular personal views are a different story entirely. I'm not saying that, when I say that, is that they aren't views of any authority. I'm not an expert on this subject, but I'm saying that when I saw the film, this is my first observation. I think, if I can just add, one also, I think, has to sort of recognize to a large extent the context. When you spoke, when you spoke earlier on about the Goldstone report, the Goldstone report also put a lot of onus on the Palestinians. But yet everything here is so painted so bleakly as if it's one side versus the other. We have an issue over here which is very much more complex. It's an issue of the relations not just between Israel and between the Palestinians, but also Egypt and the Palestinians, also America and the Palestinians and Israel, even though this gentleman mentioned it's the Israeli lobby that is managing to get the Americans to act the way they act. One could take force on that because it may not be the case. Maybe there is this idea that they've expressed of common values. It's a little bit more involved. I think that we can go to the sources. I realized there were books written, Messerschmitt, I think it was, who was involved in one of them. But I'm saying that the issues are a little bit more, the way I see it, shades of gray. Yeah, Meisheimer, and I forget the other person as well from Harvard. Was it from Chicago? Yeah. That was highly criticized, by the way. But anyway, there are different views on that. So I'm saying that the issues, in my opinion, are a little bit more involved. And I'd like just to sort of end my diatribe, which is what it is, just with a question to you. How do you individually, the two of you, how do you see, as you mentioned before, a sustainable peace? What would give you, in your opinions, justice in that part of the world? Is it the question of two states for two people? Because I believe this is what you hinted at. Or is it the idea of one state for a binational state composed of the two people? Which I suspect might be the view that you may have. Can I just leave it at that point now? Thank you.
I think, sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Khan. Would anyone else like to offer a personal perspective? Yes, go to the mic, please. Yes.
Yes.
Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Nick Ferryman from Macedon University. I'm also a member of the PSC as well. In response to Dr. Khan, can I say that the PSC, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign's steward, if I may also say it too, our position is to support the Palestinians, and it's entirely up to the Palestinians to decide whether they want a two-state or one-state solution. It has nothing to do with us in that regard. They're the only people who can decide what is right for them. Our job, we would say our job is to support them 100% in whatever decision they may choose to make on whether it's a two-state or one-state solution on that there. What I would like to do, though, is to address a question. I think it's two questions, I'm not sure here. See how it goes. To Daragh. You were saying that you see the top-down solution to justice either through the ICC or through the UN, as ICC there isn't any jurisdiction there for this, and through the UN being blocked by the veto of certain nation states in the Security Council. That is to say the US in particular, but the UK has a major role in this as well, unfortunately, because I'm from the UK. So with the top down, we're having difficulties, and you are suggesting that the major route forward for ensuring justice is through international jurisdiction. That is to say, those, for example, we'll take a case with Tzipi Livni, the previous Foreign Secretary of Israel, removed at the last election in February, where there is, as you may, I'm sure you know, there is an arrest warrant out for her.
There was, yeah.
There was. Is it still?
No, it was cancelled.
Who cancelled it?
The government. Once it was determined that she wasn't in the jurisdiction.
Well, I was going to ask that question. The question is going to be: is universal jurisdiction going to be blocked for us as citizens, global citizens, from ensuring that justice, these criminals are brought to court? And what roles do governments have in making sure that international jurisdiction doesn't apply? Because David Miliband and others have said they want to change the law, they want to change international law to make sure that people like Tzipi Livni are not held to account. If our governments are going to do this, what role do we have as citizens, as global citizens, bringing about justice then for not just the Palestinians, for anyone else that finds themselves in this?